At 8:14 a.m., my phone lit up on the kitchen counter, vibrating against the marble like it had something urgent to confess. One message from my mother, punctuation, perfect tone, mechanical. We changed all the locks on the front door and also the gate code. We no longer trust you. For a second, I just stared at it, coffee still dripping steam, ghosting the air. Then I typed back, calm as ever, noted. That was clever. But I believe you forgot one thing. I hit send and watched the little bubble disappear. Outside, the city kept moving, unaware that one family had just declared war in a single text. When people say family first, I used to nod automatically like loyalty was muscle memory. For 4 years, I paid their mortgage property taxes, utilities, roof repairs, and even the new water heater after last winter's storm. Every bill came to me, every thanks went to someone else. Mom used to say, "You're such a blessing, Lisa," in that rehearsed tone that sounded like a receipt being folded, not gratitude being spoken. From the outside, my family looked picture perfect. The Carson house with its white porch railings, a home sweet home sign swinging by the door, and a mother who hosted Bible brunches about love and unity. Inside, everything was transactional. If Lindsay, my older sister, needed daycare money, it was Lisa, you're the responsible one. If Dad's credit card maxed out, it was, you know how hard he works. But when I asked for anything a weekend to myself, a boundary, they called me ungrateful. Lindsay had 2 kids and a full-time gift for turning inconvenience into emergency. Her car breaks. Dangerous for the kids. Her card got hacked, just until payday. The problem was payday never came. Every time I bailed her out, Mom framed it as, love family helps family. The unspoken line was always, and you'll pay for it. Dad was the kind of man who believed silence fixed everything. He avoided conflict like it was contagious, cracking jokes whenever tension filled a room. "Hey, Liz," he'd laugh, "at least you're not broke, right?" Once he borrowed my name to apply for a small loan, just a paperwork mix-up, he said. I let it go like I always did. Because in our family, the peacekeeper didn't win arguments, she absorbed them. The house itself had become a shrine to that dynamic. I'd visit and see the curtains I'd paid for, the roof I'd replaced, and my mother beaming like she'd built it brick by brick. She'd pour me tea and remind me how blessed we were that Lindsay found such a beautiful home. I never corrected her. I just smiled my throat tight, pretending I didn't notice she used the word we as if I wasn't sitting right there. Some nights I'd lie awake in my apartment staring at the ceiling fan, replaying every favor I'd said yes to. It started as kindness and turned into a system one where love was measured in payments made on time. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being the daughter and became the donor. So when that message came, "We no longer trust you," it didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like confirmation. They'd just put in writing what had been true for years. The locks were changed, but the door had been closing long before that. It started with a Facebook post I wasn't supposed to see. I was waiting curbside for a grocery pickup when the algorithm handed me a little betrayal wrapped in family pride. There they were, Mom, Dad, and Lindsay standing on the porch of my house, the one I'd been paying for 4 years. Mom's caption read, "So proud of our daughter Lindsay for building a home we can all share. It's finally in the right hands." I read it 3 times, hoping my name might appear somewhere, maybe in the comments. It didn't. Just a stream of hearts. And she's such a good daughter from relatives who never once called to ask how I was. My throat burned, and the grocery clerk's voice barely reached me. "Ma'am, your order's ready." I couldn't even move. Later, I called the bank, part logic, part denial. The woman on the line chirped, "Yes, Ms. Carson. You're still the primary on the mortgage, but there was a request last week to change that to a Miss Lindsay Carson. Verification pending." My stomach dropped. Someone had tried to rewrite ownership like it was a name tag. By the time I checked my account, the theft was quiet but obvious. $2 and $400 transferred out to a familiar card. Lindsay's emergency visa. I texted her, "Did you use my card again?" 10 minutes later. "Don't make it a thing, Lisa. The kids needed shoes. We're still sharing that one, right?" We weren't. Then Mom chimed in, "Honey, Lindsay's going through so much. She said she'll pay you back. Let's not start a war over a few dollars." A few dollars. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking, but not from rage, from recognition. It had never been about money. It was about value. Their emergencies always outweighed my boundaries. That night, a notification blinked Family Circle group chat. I hadn't looked in months, but curiosity is a cruel thing. Inside, someone had posted a meme, a man handing over his wallet. The caption read, "Big sponsor energy." A cousin tagged me. Another replied, "Can we get you to fund my loans next?" Even Dad joined in, "Only if you name your next cat after the bank." No one said it was cruel. No one defended me. I left the chat. They added me back with balloons. I left again and blocked everyone. It should have felt childish. Instead, it felt like air. A week later, I stopped by the house to mow the backyard, old habit. Halfway through, I heard laughter from the kitchen window. Lindsay's voice bright and easy. "Did you see her face when Aunt Karen asked about the deed? She looked like a guest." Mom laughed too, that low, satisfied tone. "Once the paperwork clears, there's nothing she can say." She insisted on putting the mortgage in her name. Her problem now. Then Lindsay sharper. "She's always been distant, a guest with a wallet." And Mom finished it. "She's not family anymore. She's just a sponsor." The hose slipped from my hand. Water spilled over my shoes, but I didn't move. I didn't cry either. Something inside me turned still, like water freezing mid-pour. I didn't go inside that day. I turned off the mower, left it right there in the yard, and drove home with the windows down, letting the wind dry whatever was left of the sting. By the time I reached my apartment, I knew exactly what I had to do. The house wasn't mine anymore, not really. But the payments, the proof were. I sat at my kitchen table, the same place I'd read Mom's message a week earlier. The coffee stain from that morning was still faintly visible on the counter, like a watermark on a document. I opened my laptop, logged into my bank, and hovered over the auto transfer that read $4 or $800, recurring monthly payment. The cursor blinked. My hand didn't tremble. Cancel. The confirmation screen flashed once, and that was it. 4 years of silence undone in a single click. I leaned back in my chair, a strange calm settling over me. The kind that doesn't come after victory, it comes after clarity. I opened a new spreadsheet and started typing mortgage, property tax, roof repairs, utilities, insurance, daycare, groceries. Each entry got a date, an amount, a short note. Line after line, 4 years of transactions came alive again. Like ghosts, I was finally calling by name. When I finished, the total glared up at me, 211 yuan, $723, 84 hours. My breath caught, not from regret, but from validation. I printed every page and slid them into a binder. Then, for the first time in years, I labeled something for myself evidence. That night, a soft thud at my door pulled me from the numbers. A white envelope with gold edges, no return address. Inside, a glossy invitation, "Please join us to celebrate Elizabeth Carson's 60th birthday." The quote at the bottom read, "A house is not a home without family." I almost laughed. The irony was so loud it was quiet. I pinned the invitation to my fridge, right beside the binder of payments, a reminder that every story needs an ending. For the next few nights, I barely slept. I wasn't angry anymore. I was meticulous. Each evening after work, I gathered receipts, screenshots, audio files. I even found a voice memo from that afternoon in the backyard. My phone had been recording from my pocket. The line played back crisp and cruel. "She's not family anymore. She's just a sponsor." Hearing it again didn't hurt, it focused me. That sentence had been the final transaction. They defined me as a sponsor. Fine. Sponsors can cancel. Sponsors can audit. I texted Grandpa that night, "I'm going to Mom's party. I think it's time things are said out loud." No reply came, but I knew he read it. He always did. He was the only one who never asked for money, never treated kindness like a down payment. The day before the party, I rehearsed. Not words, but composure. I stood in front of my mirror wearing a navy blazer and jeans, hair tied back, nothing fancy. Calm, capable, unshakable, that was the point. They thrived on my reactions. This time they'd get none. Before heading to bed, I packed the binder and the USB with every file neatly labeled. I zipped them into a plain black bag and set it by the door. The weight of it wasn't heavy. It was balance. When the morning came, I poured coffee, glanced at the invitation one last time, and whispered to myself, "That was clever. But you forgot one thing." Then I smiled, locked my apartment, and left for the party. The party was exactly what I expected: emerald and gold decorations, a rented banquet hall that smelled faintly of perfume and champagne, and the soft hum of people pretending to adore each other. My mother had always known how to make an event feel like a performance. Tonight, she was the star. I walked in 10 minutes late on purpose. The chatter dimmed when people noticed me, like someone had lowered the volume knob. A few polite smiles flickered, unsure whether to greet me or avoid me. Lindsay froze mid-sentence at the punch bowl, then looked away so quickly it was almost convincing. I found an empty chair near the back. No one approached. Perfect. I wanted distance, not to hide, but to watch. From here, I could see everything: the slideshow of Mom's life looping on a projector, the Happy 60th Elizabeth banner strung across the wall, the pile of shiny gift boxes near the stage. The lights dimmed, and the MC, a family friend who loved his own voice, tapped the mic. "Let's all raise a glass to Elizabeth Carson," he said, "a woman of grace, generosity, and love." Laughter and applause rippled through the room like a rehearsed cue. I sipped my water, tasting the irony. The slideshow rolled again: wedding photos, vacations, baby pictures of Lindsay and me. My mother narrated from the stage in her practiced warmth. This home was built with love and passed down with purpose. It's a legacy, a reminder that family always comes first. And then Lindsay took the microphone. "Mom," she said, voice trembling just enough to sound heartfelt, "you've taught us what real family means: sacrifice, loyalty, faith. This house represents that. It's the heart of who we are." Applause erupted. Flashbulbs from cell phones lit up the room. I felt my pulse slow, not speed up, because the louder they clapped, the clearer I became. Mom dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. "I'm so proud of my daughter," she said, smiling toward Lindsay. "She's shown us what legacy truly means, and I'm grateful this home will stay in the right hands." That phrase, the right hands, the same words from that Facebook post. I stood. The applause faded just enough for the microphone to pick up my footsteps. I didn't rush. I walked up the aisle like someone who belonged there. "I wasn't planning to speak tonight," I said, my voice even amplified across the room. "But since we're talking about legacy, maybe we should talk about what it costs." A ripple of whispers rolled through the tables. Mom's smile twitched. "Lisa," she said softly, that warning tone she used when she wanted me to shut up without saying it out loud, "maybe we can do this another time." "I think now works," I said. I reached into my bag and held up the USB drive. "Could someone plug this in for me?" A cousin near the laptop hesitated, then complied. The screen behind Mom flickered, the slideshow cutting to black. For a second, the room was silent except for the projector's hum. Then an audio file began to play. Mom's voice, clear and cold. "She's not family anymore. She's just a sponsor." The words hit the air like glass shattering. Gasps, murmurs, a clatter of a dropped fork. My mother went pale. Lindsay stiffened beside her lips, parting as if to deny it. I didn't look at either of them. I clicked to the next file. The projector lit up with a screenshot: the family circle group chat. The meme, the comments. Big sponsor energy. "Can you fund my loans next? Keep the donor happy." The laughter that had filled this hall for an hour was gone. Another click. The spreadsheet appeared: rows and rows of payments, every line dated and labeled. Mortgage, property tax, roof repair, daycare. Each total highlighted in red. At the bottom, the sum glowed on the screen: $211,723.84. "This," I said quietly, "is the price of your legacy." Every mortgage payment, every emergency, every bill I covered while you called me family, only when it was convenient. Mom finally found her voice. "It was a gift, Lisa. Families help each other." I met her eyes. "No, families thank each other. Gifts come with gratitude, not deceit." Dad rose from his chair, voice trembling with anger. "You don't come here and humiliate your mother in front of everyone." I turned toward him. "You mean the way you used my name for that bank loan without asking? Because I still have the paperwork. Should I show that too?" He froze. His mouth open, closed, then shut completely. Lindsay stepped forward, face flushed. "You're blowing this out of proportion." "We were just stealing," I finished for her, redefining ownership. Her jaw tightened. "You always think you're better than everyone?" "I don't think that," I interrupted. "I just think I finally see everyone clearly." The room had gone utterly still. Even the kids in the corner were silent. I could hear the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights. Then the doors at the back of the hall opened. The sound of a cane tapping echoed as my grandfather stepped in. Conversations broke into stunned whispers. He hadn't attended a family event in years. He made his way slowly toward the stage, stopping beside me. The lines on his face looked carved from resolve. He took the microphone from my hand and turned first to my mother. "You raised a thief," he said quietly. Then to my father, and a coward. A collective breath caught in the room. Finally, he faced me. "Lisa, I read your message. You were right to stand up for yourself. Last week, I changed the trust. Lindsay's name is gone. The property, the accounts, they're yours now." The silence broke into gasps, then murmurs. My mother's face drained of color. Lindsay's mouth fell open, no words, just panic. Grandpa handed the mic back to me. "Legacy," he said, looking around the room, "isn't about inheritance. It's about behavior repeated." Then he walked out, cane tapping in rhythm, the sound of closure following him. I stood there a moment longer. My hands were steady. I looked at Mom, then Lindsay, then the crowd of relatives staring at me like they'd just watched a play where they didn't understand the ending. I walked to the gift table, placed my thick stack of invoices beside the wrapped presents, and said softly, "You changed the locks. I changed my future." Then I left. No cake, no toasts, no apologies, just the sound of chairs scraping and 100 eyes following me to the door. Outside, the night air hit like freedom. My phone buzzed in my bag, dozens of notifications, missed calls, messages lighting up the screen. I didn't look. I just kept walking, the USB still warm in my pocket. For the first time, I wasn't the daughter trying to earn love. I was the woman who stopped funding her own mistreatment. The banquet hall shimmered in gold and emerald. The colors my mother had always claimed looked regal. It reeked of roses and expensive perfume, the kind that made you feel underdressed no matter what you wore. I walked in 10 minutes late, not out of disrespect, out of strategy. Nothing unsettles control freaks more than unpredictability. Heads turned as I entered. Conversations faltered, laughter thinned. I saw it ripple across the room like a chill recognition discomfort gossip in real time. Lindsay froze near the dessert table, wearing the same self-satisfied smile she'd used my whole life. The one that said, "You're too late again." I found a seat near the back. I didn't greet anyone, didn't fake a smile. I simply watched. The slideshow began images of family vacations, Lindsay's wedding photos of the house I paid for. I waited to see if even one picture of me would appear. None did. When Mom took the mic, her voice filled the room, sugary and sure. "This home," she said, smiling toward Lindsay, "represents our family's strength and togetherness. It was built with love, and it will stay in the right hands." The right hands. The same words she'd used online. The same ones that had burned through me weeks ago. Applause filled the hall, clinking glasses and polite cheers. I felt my pulse slow, steady, deliberate. Rage had no use here. Precision did. Lindsay walked to the stage and hugged Mom, taking the mic with mock humility. "Mom has sacrificed so much for us," she began, "and I've just tried to carry her example to keep the family's heart beating." I could feel the audience leaning in, smiling, nodding. It was a room full of people hypnotized by the performance of goodness. I stood smoothing the sleeve of my blazer and began walking toward the stage. The applause faltered. People turned. Chairs creaked. My mother's expression froze halfway between pride and panic. "I wasn't planning to speak tonight," I said evenly, taking the spare mic from the stand. "But since we're talking about family and sacrifice, maybe it's time we talk about what those words have cost." My mother's hand twitched toward me like she might whisper something, some polite, murderous plea for silence. I didn't look at her. "I have a short presentation," I said, reaching into my bag. "Could someone help me plug this in?" A cousin near the projector hesitated, glancing at Mom, then at me, and decided curiosity outweighed loyalty. He took the USB and slotted it in. The slideshow blinked off, and a new file name appeared on screen. Sponsorship Program for Years. XLSX. The room chuckled nervously. I let them. The first audio clip began to play background chatter, then my mother's voice, cold and unmistakable. She's not family anymore, she's just a sponsor. The laughter stopped. Someone gasped. Glass shattered. Lindsay's face drained of color. Mom stood frozen, her lips parted but no sound emerging. I waited for the echo to die before I spoke. That was recorded 3 weeks ago, the day you told me I wasn't family. I clicked to the next slide screenshots of the group chat. The meme of a man handing over his wallet. The comments, big sponsor energy. Can you fund my loans next? Keep the donor happy. This, I said, is what love looks like in the Carson family. No one moved. I heard a chair leg scrape against the floor. Click. The spreadsheet filled the screen, rows of payments, line after line, mortgage, property tax, roof repairs, daycare, groceries. 4 years' worth of invisible labor. At the bottom, a total in red, $723.84. This, I said quietly, is what that love cost. Dad rose from his chair, red-faced. You're embarrassing your mother. Turn that off right now. I looked straight at him. You mean like you embarrassed me when you took out a loan in my name because I still have the paperwork? Should I project that next? He froze, sinking slowly back down. The audience shifted, murmurs, spreading eyes darting between me and my parents. Mom finally found her voice brittle and trembling. Lisa, it was never about money. Families help each other. I met her gaze. No, Mom. Families thank each other. Families don't rewrite ownership and then lock you out of the house you've been paying for. Lindsay's voice cut in sharp and desperate. You're twisting everything. It wasn't like that. I turned to her. Really? Because the bank records the chat logs and this audio seem pretty clear. But go ahead. What part am I twisting? Her mouth opened, then closed. Nothing came out. The silence was thick enough to choke on. Every relative in that room had an opinion. None of them dared speak it aloud. Then came the sound, steady, rhythmic, tap, tap, tap. The doors opened and my grandfather entered, leaning on his cane. Conversation died entirely. Even my mother looked startled. He walked down the aisle, slowly ignoring the stares until he reached me. His presence filled the space without raising his voice. Lisa, he said softly, taking the mic from my hand. You were right. He turned to my mother. Elizabeth, you raised a thief. His eyes flicked to my father. And you became a coward. Gasps rolled through the room. My mother's hand flew to her chest, eyes wide with humiliation. Grandpa continued, voice even deliberate. Last week I reviewed the trust. I've removed Lindsay's name. The property, the accounts, they now belong to Lisa, the one who earned them. The room erupted in whispers, shock, outrage, awe. Lindsay's jaw dropped. Dad stared at the floor. Mom reached for Grandpa's arm, but he stepped back. You wanted legacy, he said. Then earn it. Deceit doesn't build families, it rots them. He handed the mic back to me. Your turn, kid. I nodded once, then faced the crowd again. My heartbeat was steady. The storm was already over. I was just narrating the damage. I lifted the binder from my bag and placed it on the gift table right between a bouquet and a box wrapped in gold paper. You changed the locks, I said quietly. I changed my future. No one clapped. No one dared. I walked off the stage, every step deliberate. The hall was silent except for the hum of the projector still showing the final slide, paid in full. As I reached the door, my mother's voice broke the silence, small and pleading. Lisa, wait. I paused but didn't turn around. She said, You don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said. You taught me. Then I walked out. Outside, the cool night wrapped around me like mercy. I could still hear the muffled noise of the party behind me, voices, rising chairs, scraping, someone crying. I kept walking until it all faded. My phone buzzed again and again, Mom, Dad, Lindsay, all lighting up the screen. I let it ring until it stopped. Then another vibration, a voicemail from Grandpa. I pressed play. His voice was calm. Proud of you, kid. You did what needed to be done. I smiled to myself, sliding the phone into my pocket. For the first time, silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I looked up at the sky, the streetlight casting long shadows on the pavement. My hands didn't shake. My breathing was steady. And for once, the night didn't feel cold. It felt clean. By morning, my inbox was a battlefield emails from a law office subject line in all caps, settlement proposal urgent. I skimmed the message. They wanted to resolve the misunderstanding amicably. Translation, hush money. I typed back one line. Full repayment within 72 hours, or I go public. Then I closed my laptop and poured myself another coffee. They wired the full amount on the third day. 211 and $723.84. No apology, no explanation, just numbers, the language they'd always spoken best. I replied, transaction received. No further contact necessary. And that was it. After that, the noise stopped. No calls, no texts, no fake concern, just quiet. The kind that doesn't ache, it breathes. I cleaned my apartment, bought daisies from the market, rearranged the bookshelves. When my phone finally stayed still, I realized peace doesn't sound like angels singing. It sounds like nothing demanding your attention. A week later, I drove to Grandpa's house. He was on the porch with his tea sunlight caught in the wrinkles around his eyes. They're furious, he said, smiling a little. Good, I answered. Maybe fury will make them think, he nodded. Forgiveness requires accountability, he said. They haven't earned it. I stayed until sunset. Neither of us spoke much. We didn't need to. When I got home, I stood on my balcony watching the city shift from gold to blue. My phone buzzed once more, an unknown number, a single image, the old house overgrown and empty. On the back, in Mom's handwriting, "We miss you. Please come home." I folded it carefully and slid it into my drawer. Home isn't where you're locked out. It's where you can finally breathe. They changed the locks. I changed my life. I used to think peace would come with forgiveness, but now I know it comes with distance. I don't wait for their calls. I don't check my inbox hoping for remorse. I stop mistaking access for love. Some people think cutting ties is cruel. Truth is it's the kindest thing I've ever done for myself. When I wake up now, there's no background tension humming under the day, just sunlight, coffee, and quiet. That's freedom. Not dramatic, not loud, just mine. If you've ever been the one holding a family together while they tear you apart, remember this: silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the first step toward peace. They changed the locks. I changed my life. If this story hit home, share us, leave a comment, and hit subscribe for more stories like this.
My name is Dorothy Gordon, and I'm 31 years old. For most of my 20s, I believed I was living the kind of love story people envied. Steady, loyal, built on years of shared dreams and quiet sacrifices. I thought I'd found my forever in Dave. We met in college. He was the charming, messy art major who lived like the world owed him inspiration, and I was the architecture student who color-coded every notebook. He used to say I was the calm to his chaos. I believed him. I fell in love with his unpredictability, his laugh, his constant need to turn everything into something beautiful. Back then, I thought that was enough. After graduation, reality came fast. I landed a full-time job at a design firm while Dave tried to turn his photography hobby into a business. The freelance world wasn't kind. He'd spend hours chasing clients who ghosted him or rejected his work. I carried the rent, the bills, the groceries, telling myself it was temporary. Love required patience, right? When he lost a major client, I found him slumped on the couch, staring into space. I knelt beside him, cupping his face. "We'll figure it out. You're talented, Dave." I remember the way his eyes softened. "You always believe in me," he whispered. I did. Too much. Years passed like that. Me chasing stability, him chasing passion. I learned to cook because we couldn't afford takeout. I gave up trips with my friends because we needed to save for his new equipment. Every sacrifice felt like an investment in our future. I wanted him to have the life he dreamed of, and I thought that meant putting mine on hold. Then one day, everything I believed in cracked. It was a Thursday night. Dave had gone out for drinks with coworkers from the agency that had recently hired him. He said they were celebrating a successful campaign. I didn't think twice. He'd been distant lately, yes, but I trusted him. I stayed home finishing a floor plan revision on my laptop when I heard his laptop ping from the living room table. I wasn't snooping. The message popped up in plain sight. A group chat titled Agency After Dark. The screen lit up with the words that changed everything. "Sleeping with her is fine." I just close my eyes and think of Margot Robbie. There was a string of laughing emojis from his friends, followed by one that said, "Damn Dave Savage." I stared at the screen, frozen. My breath caught somewhere between a gasp and a scream. Her. That was me. I didn't need context. I knew exactly who he meant. My husband, my partner, the man I'd believed in for 7 years, was mocking our intimacy, reducing me to a punchline. My hands trembled. For a full minute, I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. He wasn't just unfaithful in body, he was cruel in spirit. I closed the laptop, quietly afraid of what I might do if I didn't. My reflection in the black screen looked foreign pale, still eyes too wide. The apartment was silent except for the refrigerator hum, and that silence felt suffocating. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there staring at nothing, letting the weight of the words sink in. Sleeping with her is fine. Was that what I'd become? A habit, a convenience. That night, I went to bed alone. I lay stiff under the covers, staring at the ceiling. Every laugh, every kiss, every whispered "I love you," unraveling in my mind. He came home late, humming to himself, reeking of expensive perfume that wasn't mine. When he slid into bed, I didn't flinch. I just turned away. The next morning, over coffee, I asked casually, "Had fun last night?" He grinned. "Yeah, just the team. You know how it is." I smiled faintly, pretending nothing was wrong. "Sure." And in that instant, something inside me shifted. I didn't confront him. I didn't throw a mug or demand an apology. I decided something far worse. I decided to stop trying. From that day on, I stopped reaching for him. No hugs when he came home. No. Good morning kisses. No soft touches while passing in the hallway. I spoke only when necessary. I was polite, calm, detached. I became invisible in my own home. Part of me expected him to notice, to ask what was wrong, to care. But days turned into weeks, and he didn't. If anything, he seemed relieved. He spent more time at late meetings, came home smelling of cologne that didn't belong to him. Once his phone buzzed on the counter while he showered. I didn't touch it, but the name flashing across the screen, Madison Hale, was burned into my memory. I'd heard him mention her before, his creative partner. I started seeing patterns I'd ignored. The secretive smiles, the messages he hid when I entered the room, the way he'd say, "You wouldn't understand," whenever I asked about work. Still, I said nothing. Instead, I began to change quietly. I returned to the gym after work. I started sketching again, something I hadn't done since college. I filled notebooks with messy lines and half-finished drawings. It was like rediscovering pieces of myself buried beneath years of compromise. He noticed the change, but misread it completely. "You're different lately," he said one night, chewing absent-mindedly at dinner. "Am I?" I asked. "Yeah, distant." I smiled. "Maybe I finally learned to give you space." He laughed uneasy, then shrugged. "Fine by me." That was the thing about Dave, he mistook peace for surrender. As I washed the dishes that night, his words echoed in my head, "Fine by me." I realized he truly believed I would never leave, that I was too patient, too gentle, too forgiving. But patience can turn into strategy. 2 weeks later, when he forgot his phone on the nightstand, I didn't snoop. I didn't need to. I hired someone. A quiet call to a private investigator I found through a friend at work. It felt strange, clinical, like signing a contract with my own heartbreak. I handed over the necessary details, names, schedules, places. Then I waited. In the waiting, I discovered a strange calm. At work, I performed better than ever. My manager even commented on how focused I seemed. I smiled politely, thinking, focus comes easily when you stop crying at night. 3 days later, the investigator emailed me a folder. Photos, dates, receipts. Dave and Madison at a bar, laughing too closely. Madison's hand brushing his chest. Another photo, unmistakable, her entering his apartment building after midnight, his hand resting on the small of her back. I stared at the images, my pulse steady, my face blank. Proof. I had proof. No more guessing, no more giving him the benefit of the doubt. It was all real. And yet I didn't rage, I didn't even cry. The grief had passed, leaving only clarity. That night, when Dave came home humming as usual, I handed him a plate of dinner, smiled faintly, and asked, "Long day?" "Yeah," he said, kissing my forehead absent-mindedly. "Madison and I are pitching a new campaign. I'm sure it'll be great," I said softly. He didn't notice the double meaning. When he turned away, I watched him with detached fascination, like studying a stranger wearing my husband's face. In that moment, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't scream, I wouldn't beg, I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing my pain. He had no idea the woman standing in front of him was no longer his wife, but his quietest, most dangerous mistake. Dave used to fill the apartment with noise humming while he cooked, drumming on countertops, narrating his thoughts aloud. Now the silence between us was almost sacred, a living, breathing thing. I fed it daily. I didn't pick fights, I didn't ask questions, I let him believe he was free. In truth, I was watching. Morning routines became mechanical. He'd grab his coffee scroll through his phone, kiss my cheek without looking up. I'd murmur, "Have a good day," and go back to my cereal, pretending not to notice the faint whiff of women's perfume clinging to his shirt floral sharp, the kind of scent I'd never wear. One Saturday, he said he was meeting the team to brainstorm. He came home at midnight smelling of wine and laughter that wasn't mine. I sat by the window, sketching in my notebook under the soft hum of the city. When he stumbled in smiling like a boy who'd just discovered a secret, he didn't notice my eyes on him. "Hey, still up?" he asked. "Couldn't sleep," I said calmly. "Long night." He blinked. "Yeah, work stuff." I nodded, flipping a page in my sketchbook. Must have been productive. He hesitated, then mumbled something about deadlines before slipping into the bedroom. When the door closed, I allowed myself a single smile, not of happiness, but of certainty. Lies always left fingerprints. You just had to look long enough. Over the next few weeks, I observed his patterns. The way he'd angle his phone away, the way his eyes lit up when Madison texted. I caught the reflection of her name once glowing across his screen like a taunt. It was almost theatrical, the affair blooming in plain sight. But I didn't explode. I became invisible instead, detached, composed. My silence confused him, then frustrated him. He started throwing small jabs at dinner about how distant I'd become or how the house felt cold. "You used to laugh more," he said one evening, swirling his wine. "You used to come home earlier," I replied. The words landed like a stone between us. He looked up startled. I didn't break eye contact. He looked away first. I wasn't trying to win an argument. I was training him to feel the emptiness he'd created. In the quiet hours after midnight, I'd sit alone on the couch, scrolling through the PI's reports on my phone. Pictures, timestamps, receipts. Dave and Madison smiling in a dimly lit restaurant. Her head on his shoulder outside a gallery. Him buying her a silver bracelet identical to one I'd once admired, except now it was on another woman's wrist. Each new piece of evidence dulled my pain and sharpened my resolve. I began organizing it neatly in folders. Digital, physical. I even printed the photos, labeling them chronologically like an architect drafting the blueprint of her own liberation. The irony wasn't lost on me. I used to design buildings that wouldn't collapse. Now I was preparing for the demolition of my marriage. At work, I became someone else, poised, efficient, unshakable. My manager noticed. "Dorothy, whatever you're doing differently, keep it up. You're glowing lately." I smiled politely. Maybe I just stopped apologizing for things that aren't my fault. Dave noticed too, though, for the wrong reasons. "You've been dressing up more," he said one morning, eyeing the tailored blouse and heels. "Do I need a reason?" I asked, buttoning my sleeve. He shrugged, smirking. "Trying to impress someone, just myself." That line silenced him more effectively than any accusation could. By the time autumn arrived, my patience had calcified into control. I wasn't angry anymore. I was calculating. One night I was half asleep when Dave stumbled into bed and whispered, "You okay?" "Yes," I answered flatly. "Are you?" He paused, confused. "Why wouldn't I be?" "Because sometimes people pretend everything's fine when they're lying to themselves." He laughed it off. "You sound like a therapist." "Maybe I've been taking notes," I murmured. He fell asleep. I didn't. I lay there listening to his shallow breathing, wondering how long it would take for his little world to crumble. A week later, I found a hotel receipt in the pocket of his jeans while doing laundry. Room 508, Sunday night. The date matched one of Madison's tagged posts online, a blurry cocktail glass with the caption, "Best night ever." He was becoming careless. Good. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and called my lawyer, a woman named Felicity. I'd quietly met for coffee weeks before. She specialized in divorce settlements, particularly ones with infidelity clauses. "Still no confrontation?" Felicity asked. "Not yet," I said. "I'm just building the foundation." "Smart," she replied. When you're ready, it'll all collapse cleanly. Collapse cleanly. The phrase lingered. That was exactly what I wanted. Dave, meanwhile, seemed almost giddy these days, humming again, wearing new shirts, texting late into the night. Once he caught me watching and smirked. Don't look at me like that. Like what? Like you're figuring me out. I smiled faintly. Maybe I already have. He laughed, but there was unease in it. For the first time, I think he sensed it. The balance of power had shifted. He was still living under the illusion that I didn't know. But I did, and worse, I'd stopped caring. The first snow came early that year. I remember standing by the window watching the city lights blur against the falling flakes. Dave texted that he'd be home late work dinner. I replied with a single word. Okay. No more waiting, no more hoping, only preparation. When he finally stumbled in past midnight, cheeks flushed from alcohol and lipstick faintly smudged near his collar, I was already in bed, pretending to sleep. He stood in the doorway watching me, maybe expecting a question or a fight. I gave him nothing. That nothing scared him more than any scream could have. Because silence is not weakness. It's power dressed in patience. And mine was about to become lethal. By the time winter arrived, I could tell Dave felt untouchable. He'd grown careless, checking his phone in plain sight, whistling as he dressed for work events, coming home late, with that smug afterglow of someone who thought he'd fooled everyone. But what he didn't realize was that every careless move was a brick in the wall I was quietly building between us. We had become polite strangers living under one roof. We shared meals, but not conversations, beds, but not warmth. The sound of his laughter had become foreign, an echo from a past life. I still cooked dinner every night because habits die slower than love. He'd walk in, kiss the top of my head absently, and say, "You're amazing, Dorothy." I'd answer, "I know." He thought I was being playful. I wasn't. The night everything shifted again started innocently enough. He came home early, a rare surprise, carrying groceries. "Thought I'd cook tonight," he said brightly. "Let's do something different." For a moment, I almost believed the act. Almost. We ate by candlelight, wine glasses half full, jazz, humming softly from the speaker. It could have been romantic if not for the fact that he couldn't stop checking his phone every few minutes. I watched him type his thumbs dancing across the screen and asked gently, "New campaign?" He looked up startled. "What?" "Oh yeah. Madison and I are finalizing ideas for the spring launch." Madison again. Always Madison. I sipped my wine eyes, never leaving his face. "You talk about her a lot." He grinned. "She's talented. You'd like her." Would I? Yeah, she's got that creative spark. Kind of reminds me of you when we first met. There it was, the casual insult wrapped in nostalgia. The version of me he remembered, the one who adored him, who believed stability was enough, was gone. But he didn't even notice. Later, as I was loading the dishwasher, he leaned against the counter. "You've been different lately." "How so?" I asked. He shrugged. "I don't know. More confident. Colder, too." "Maybe confidence and warmth aren't the same thing," I said quietly. He frowned like the thought had never occurred to him. I could tell my calm unnerved him. People like Dave feed on reactions, tears, anger, anything that proves they still matter. I gave him none of that. Just quiet control. The next morning, while he showered, I opened his jacket pocket. Another hotel receipt. Same room number, 508. Different date. I didn't even feel anger anymore. Just a dull, predictable ache. Like déjà vu. When he came out, towel slung low on his hips, I handed him his coffee. "You're meeting Madison again today?" I asked casually. He froze for a split second before forcing a smile. "Yeah. Big presentation." "Of course," I said, then leaned in, brushing a speck of lint off his shirt. "Make sure you look your best." He hesitated, eyes narrowing slightly. "You're acting weird. Am I?" I tilted my head. Maybe I've just accepted things for what they are. He didn't ask what that meant. Maybe he didn't want to know. That evening I called Felicity again. "My lawyer." "It's time," I said simply. Her tone sharpened. "You have enough proof, more than enough. Then let's prepare." I spent the next week assembling the evidence, printing photos, organizing dates, pairing receipts with timestamps from his messages. The folder was heavy when I slid it across Felicity's desk. She flipped through it, slowly nodding. "This is airtight, Dorothy. The infidelity clause will hold." "I don't want revenge," I said quietly. "I just want my life back." She smiled faintly. "You're getting both." When I got home that night, Dave was sprawled on the couch, watching a movie. "Hey, babe," he said lazily. "Pizza's on the way." I sat beside him, studying his profile, the same face I used to trace with my fingers in the dark, now just a stranger's silhouette. "Dave," I said softly, "are you happy?" He blinked. "What with us? With life?" He laughed awkwardly. "You've been reading those therapy blogs again, huh?" "Just answer," I said, voice calm but steady. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know, Dorothy. I guess I wish things were more exciting. Life feels predictable." "Predictable isn't the same as empty," I replied. He shrugged. "Maybe. But I miss when things felt spontaneous, alive, like when—" He smiled wistfully. "Like when we first met. You were fun then." I smiled too, though mine was sharper. "And now I'm what convenient." He frowned. "You're twisting things." "No," I said softly. "I'm just hearing you clearly for the first time." The silence stretched long between us, thick and heavy. Finally, he stood up, muttering, "I'm going to bed." When he was gone, I exhaled slowly and whispered into the empty room, "So am I, just not with you." That night, I packed a small suitcase, not to leave, but to prepare. I gathered important documents, personal items, things I'd need when the storm hit. The next morning, I left early for work and stopped by the bank, moved part of our joint savings into my own account, legally protected under the prenup. When I returned home that evening, Dave greeted me with a smirk. "Big day." "You have no idea," I said, slipping off my coat. 2 days later, he announced casually over breakfast, Madison and I might travel for a shoot next month. Just the two of us. Bali. I looked up from my coffee, expression unreadable. "Sounds fun." He blinked, caught off guard by my lack of reaction. "You're okay with that?" "Of course," I said, smiling faintly. "You should go. You've earned it." The satisfaction in his face was almost pitiful. He mistook permission for power. That night, I stood by the bedroom window, watching the reflection of the city lights ripple across the glass. Behind me, Dave snored, softly oblivious. I whispered to the darkness, "Enjoy the freedom you think you have. You'll need it." Because in a matter of weeks, every illusion he'd built, every lie he'd told, would come crashing down around him. And when it did, I wouldn't raise my voice. I'd just stand still and let the silence finish what I started. The morning I filed for divorce, the sky was gray, soft drizzle coating the city in silver light. I remember thinking it looked like the world was washing itself clean. Maybe in a way I was too. I walked into Felicity's office with the calm of someone who had rehearsed every step. The folder of evidence, photos, receipts, messages was neatly bound. Felicity skimmed through them once more, nodding. "He doesn't stand a chance," she said. "I don't want him to lose everything," I replied. "I just want what's fair." She gave me a knowing look. "Dorothy, you've been fair long enough." By that evening, the papers were filed. Dave didn't even know yet. He thought he still had time, that he still controlled the rhythm of our lives. That illusion shattered the next day at noon. I'll never forget the look on his face when a courier delivered the thick envelope to his office. He called me minutes later, voice trembling with disbelief. "What is this?" he demanded. "Legal paperwork," I said calmly. "You'll want to read it carefully. You filed for divorce." "Yes." "You're serious." "I've never been more serious." There was silence on the other end, followed by a brittle laugh. "You can't just, Dorothy, we can fix this." "Can we?" I asked quietly. "Tell me how." He didn't answer. That night he came home furious. "You blindsided me," he shouted, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. "I gave you every chance to be honest," I said, my tone even. "You chose lies instead." He rubbed his face, pacing. "This is insane. You think you can just walk away and take everything?" I met his eyes. "No, I don't think I can. I know I can. The prenup says so." His jaw tightened. "You're bluffing. Check your email." He did. I watched the color drain from his face as he opened the digital copies Felicity had sent, every timestamp, every photograph, every receipt, every message to Madison. The clause was clear: infidelity forfeited shared assets. He sank onto the couch, hands gripping his hair. "You had someone follow me. I had someone tell me the truth," I replied. For a long moment he said nothing. The only sound was the steady tick of the kitchen clock. Then he muttered, "I never thought you'd actually do it." "That's the problem, Dave," I said softly. "You never thought I would do anything." After that night, everything moved fast. His lawyer called mine. The negotiations were brief. The proof was overwhelming. I kept the house, my savings, my car. He was left scrambling for a place to stay. For the first time in years, I felt light. Not happy, not yet, but free. He moved in with Madison a week later. I expected that. They posted pictures online, smiling selfies, captions about new beginnings. Mutual friends sent me screenshots waiting for my reaction. I had none. Let them play house, I thought. Let them believe love can grow in soil, fertilized by betrayal. For a while, I disappeared into routine, work, gym, sleep. My life became quiet again, but this time the silence belonged to me. Then the cracks began to show. It started with a rumor from an old coworker of his. Hey, did you hear Dave and Madison got fired? Office romance went public. I smiled faintly. No, I hadn't. Then came whispers that Madison had been flirting with a client behind his back. Soon after she dumped him, moved out overnight, left him with overdue rent and a pile of unpaid bills. Karma, it seemed, had a sense of timing. One evening, as I was watering the plants on the balcony, I got a text from an unknown number. Dave, I made a mistake. I didn't respond. 2 days later, another one. Madison's gone. She used me. You were right. Still nothing from me. He called once, twice, 3 times. I silenced each ring. Eventually, he showed up at the building, waiting by the front gate like a ghost. I saw him through the intercom camera. Unkempt eyes, hollow rain dripping from his hair. When I stepped outside, he looked almost startled. Dorothy, he said hoarsely, can we talk? I folded my arms. About what us? Everything. I was an idiot. I ruined everything good in my life. I told you that months ago, I said. He took a step closer. I'm serious. I know I hurt you. But Madison, she's not who I thought she was. She's toxic, controlling. I see now what I had with you. You were real. I let out a soft laugh, not bitter, just tired. Dave, you don't get to rediscover love when your backup plan fails. Please, he said, voice breaking. I don't have anyone. That's because you treated everyone like they were replaceable. Rain started to fall again, light but steady. He stood there, soaked, desperate, reaching for something that no longer existed. I'm begging you, he whispered. Just help me. Let me in. We can fix this. I looked at him for a long time, then said gently, you can't rebuild a house that burned down using the same ashes. He stared speechless. I turned and went back inside. Behind the closed door, I exhaled shakily, not from sadness but relief. The version of me who would have pitied him was gone. I wasn't his caretaker anymore. Days passed, then weeks. The text dwindled, then stopped. Through the grapevine, I heard he'd moved back in with his parents. His photography studio had shut down. Most of his old friends stopped answering his calls. I didn't smile when I heard it. I didn't need to. Justice doesn't always roar, it settles quietly like dust after an explosion. One afternoon, Felicity invited me to lunch to celebrate the finalized divorce. You handled it better than most, she said, raising her glass. I learned the art of patience, I replied. Turns out silence was my sharpest weapon. That night, as I stood on the balcony watching the city glow beneath the rain, I thought of everything Dave had taken from me, trust, time, tenderness, and how I'd taken it all back without a single scream. He used to say I was too calm, too predictable. He was right. Predictable people are dangerous. You always know where to find them until you look and they're gone. And when I was gone, so was his power. It was almost poetic the way he returned exactly 1 year after the day I found that message. The same gray drizzle, the same heaviness in the air, like time had folded in on itself. I had just finished dinner when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw him. Dave. His clothes were soaked through, his once carefully styled hair, now flat and dripping. His eyes, though they weren't the same. They looked haunted. For a second, I thought of not opening the door, but something in me wanted closure, not revenge, not pity, just the quiet ending to a chapter I'd already outgrown. I cracked the door, the chain still on. What do you want, Dave? He swallowed rainwater streaking down his jaw. To talk. Please. Just 5 minutes. 5 minutes won't fix a year of betrayal. He winced, hands trembling slightly. I deserve that. But please, Dorothy, I've hit bottom. I can't sleep. I keep thinking about what I did to you. I studied him for a long moment, then unlatched the chain and opened the door just enough for him to step inside. He hesitated, wiping his shoes on the mat like a guilty child. The apartment hadn't changed much, but it looked different because I was different. Softer lighting, fresh flowers, new art on the walls. My space finally mine. He looked around as if walking through a museum of memories he didn't belong to anymore. You've redecorated, he murmured. I cleaned out what didn't serve me, I said. That includes people. He flinched but nodded. I deserve that too. For a moment, the only sound was the rain against the windows. Then he spoke voice-breaking Madison. She wasn't what I thought. She was jealous, controlling. She wanted everything to be about her. When the affair went public, we both got fired. She blamed me. I held up a hand. Stop. I don't need the post-mortem of your choices. He looked up, eyes wet. Dorothy, I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I am. Truly. You were the only one who ever believed in me. You saw the best version of me, and I destroyed that. I don't know how to live with what I did. There was a time when those words would have broken me. Now they just echoed softly hollow, like rain on an empty street. Dave, I said quietly, I spent years thinking if I just loved harder, you'd finally see me. You didn't. You saw convenience, comfort, stability, and you called it boring. He looked down. I was stupid. You were cruel, I corrected gently. There's a difference. He took a shaky breath. Can we at least start over? Not as husband and wife, just as people. Maybe friends. I smiled faintly, sadness threading through it. You can't be friends with someone you once broke on purpose. He rubbed his face, frustration and grief mixing in his expression. I've lost everything, Dorothy. My job, my friends, my reputation. Please, I have nothing. I studied him carefully. You still have the one thing I gave you at the end, Dave. He frowned. What's that, consequences? The silence that followed was deep, almost kind. He nodded, slowly defeated. You really are different now. I had to be, I said. You taught me that peace isn't something people give you. It's something you build after they've burned everything down. He stood there for another moment, waiting for something that would never come, a flicker of forgiveness maybe, or the softness I used to wear like perfume. But I had none left for him. Finally, he whispered, Goodbye, Dorothy. Goodbye, I said, and thank you. He looked confused. For what? For teaching me the power of leaving quietly. He blinked, eyes glossy, then turned and walked out into the rain. I closed the door behind him and didn't watch him go. For a long while, I stood in the stillness of the apartment, listening to the faint hum of the city beyond the glass. I should have felt vindicated, but instead I felt calm, empty in the best possible way. Weeks later, a friend invited me to a wedding. Jake, an old colleague we both used to know. I almost didn't go, but something in me wanted to mark the end properly, surrounded by laughter, instead of regret. I arrived in a pale blue dress hair, pinned neatly, my heart light. Halfway through the reception, I caught sight of him across the room. Dave, alone. No Madison this time, no spark in his eyes. Just a man watching a world that had already moved on without him. He approached hesitantly during dinner. You look incredible, he said. Thank you, I replied. You look present. He chuckled weakly. I deserve that. Before I could respond, someone called my name. Ryan, tall, kind eyes. The man I'd met at my art workshop months ago. He walked up, slipped an arm gently around my waist. Everything okay? I smiled. Perfect. Dave's gaze flickered between us. You found someone. I found myself, I corrected. He just happens to fit into that. Ryan offered his hand to Dave. Nice to meet you, man. Dave hesitated, then shook it. You too. As Ryan guided me back to the dance floor, the band started playing a soft acoustic song, something old and tender. I leaned into his chest, my head resting against his shoulder. I could feel Dave's eyes on me from across the room, but for once I didn't feel the weight of them. He taught me what love shouldn't be, and in doing so made space for what it could become. As the music swelled, I closed my eyes, not to escape this time, but to remember it. The warmth, the quiet safety, the peace that didn't demand suffering first. I whispered to myself, almost like a prayer, never again. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. My name is Ruby Shepherd, and I was 29 when I learned what it truly meant to be someone's placeholder. If you had asked me a year ago, I would have said I was in love, deeply, completely, almost foolishly. I thought what I had with Franklin was the kind of partnership people write novels about. I was his steady ground, his second chance. I didn't realize I was only a bridge, something to be crossed once he was ready to return to the chaos he called love. For 3 years, I built my life around him. When his car broke down, I co-signed the loan so he wouldn't lose his job. When his mother got sick, I took him to every appointment, made soup, and stayed up through the night while he cried quietly beside her hospital bed. When his credit cards overflowed with debt, I helped him build a budget, promising, we'll get through this. I said we a lot back then. He never corrected me, but I think he knew it was never we. It was me carrying both of us, hoping one day he'd notice. The cracks began small like hairline fractures in glass. A locked photo album on his phone labeled Before. A faint, almost wistful smile when he stared out the window too long. A name I'd heard but never spoken aloud, Sienna. Once I'd caught him scrolling through old pictures, and I asked as gently as I could, "What are you looking at?" He'd turned his screen away and smiled. "Just memories, Elle. Don't worry, I didn't push. I trusted him. I thought trust was proof of love. It wasn't. It was a blindfold." The real break came 2 weeks ago. I was cooking his favorite lemon butter chicken. He walked in pale and distracted, clutching his phone like it was burning him. "Franklin." "What's wrong?" I asked. He didn't look at me when he said it. "Sienna's out." I stopped stirring the sauce. The name hung between us, heavy alive again. "Out," I repeated. "You mean prison?" He nodded. "Early release. Time served. She messaged me. The pan hissed. My stomach turned cold. "Franklin," I said carefully, "that's not a door you need to reopen." He flinched, as if I'd struck him. "You don't understand what we had. What you had," I said softly, "was fraud and heartbreak. She stole from you." He slammed the phone onto the counter. "You don't know her. You don't know what she was going through. She was lost. And I failed her." The words stung more than I expected. I failed her. Not she failed me. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, hands trembling over the pan, realizing that the woman who broke him still owned a piece of him I could never reach. The next days were a blur of small absences. He smiled at his phone when he thought I wasn't watching. He went to bed later, woke up earlier, always with a faint smell of whiskey and guilt. The man I had saved was slipping back into the arms of the woman who'd destroyed him, and he didn't even see it. Then came the night of the storm. He stumbled home late, his breath sharp with alcohol, his eyes wild and restless. "You're always so perfect," he muttered, leaning against the doorway. "So composed. Everything in its place. So boring." I set down the book I was reading. "Franklin, you're drunk. Go to bed." He laughed bitterly. There it is, the calm voice, the therapist tone. "Do you ever get angry, Ruby? Do you ever feel anything?" I stood up slowly. "I feel plenty. I just don't scream it." He grabbed a glass from the counter, set it down too hard. It shattered. "You don't get it," he said, eyes glassy. "You make life too easy, too safe. With Sienna, it was real. It was fire." The words hit me like a slap. "Fire," I repeated quietly. "The woman who drained your savings and got you arrested. That's your version of real." He looked at me, then really looked, and I saw the moment he decided to twist the knife. His voice steadied, cruelly calm. "I've always loved her," he said. "You were just the placeholder, Ruby, a safe place to land until she got her life together." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my heartbeat, the rain against the window, the faint hum of the fridge, all of it louder than my own breath. He waited for a reaction. Maybe he wanted me to scream, to throw something, to beg him not to go. But I didn't. I simply walked past him into our bedroom, my bedroom now, and began to pack. One bag, a week's worth of clothes, my documents, my phone charger. I didn't take anything he'd given me. Those things weren't mine. They belonged to the woman he thought I was. He followed me, his voice shaky. "What are you doing?" I didn't look at him. "Leaving. Just like that." "Yes," I said, zipping the bag. "You've made it clear I was temporary. I'm just honoring my role." When I reached the door, he was standing there, confused, almost frightened. "Ruby, wait. We need to talk about this." I looked him in the eyes one last time. "No, Franklin. You talked. You told me everything I needed to know." I opened the door. The storm outside had eased into a drizzle, but the air smelled clean, sharp, new. As I stepped out, he called after me, his voice breaking. "So that's it." I turned, slightly met his gaze. "Yes," I said softly. "That's it." And then after a beat, "Good luck with your fire." The door clicked shut behind me. The sound was so small, but it echoed like thunder. I walked through the rain to my car, my bag heavy, my body shaking, not from sadness, but from release. The windshield blurred with water and light as I drove away, leaving the ghost of a home behind. That night, in a silent hotel room that smelled faintly of bleach and cold air, I waited for the pain to come, the heartbreak, the grief, the collapse. But it didn't. All I felt was stillness, the kind that comes after a storm when the world stops spinning. I stared at the ceiling, whispering to the dark I wasn't his foundation. I was his waiting room. And for the first time in 3 years, I slept peacefully. When I woke up the next morning, the silence felt heavier than I expected, not oppressive, just foreign. For years, my days began with Franklin's voice, his half-awake grumble about the coffee being too weak, the sound of his toothbrush running longer than mine. Now there was nothing but the low hum of an air conditioner and the faint traffic outside the hotel window. I sat up slowly, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling. The sheets were stiff, the light too white, the room too clean. It felt like standing inside a blank page. Maybe that's what freedom really is, not fireworks or epiphanies, but the dull quiet of a new beginning. My phone lit up on the nightstand. 27 missed calls, 15 messages, all from Franklin. At first, I didn't open them. I watched the notifications stack like falling bricks. Then, out of morbid curiosity, I scrolled. "Ruby, please. Can we just talk? You don't walk out on someone you love. I was drunk. I didn't mean it. You're overreacting. It wasn't that deep. Elle, don't ignore me. We built a life together." Not a single apology, just bargaining denial and the same emotional gravity that always pulled me back before. But this time, I didn't orbit him. I turned off the notifications, pressed block, and placed the phone face down on the nightstand. The silence that followed was thick, almost holy. By noon, I'd packed again, not out of panic, but purpose. I called the leasing office. The woman on the other end recognized my voice. "Oh, the joint lease under Reed and Shepherd?" "Yes," I said. "I'd like to terminate my part." She hesitated. "That would require legal release from the cosigner." "I'll handle that," I replied. And I did. That afternoon, I met Mr. Carter, a calm, precise lawyer in his 50s with kind eyes that didn't pry. I told him everything: the apartment, the car loan, the shared bills. I didn't mention the word placeholder. I couldn't. Not yet. He typed notes in silence, then asked, "And what's your reason for separation, Ms. Shepherd?" I looked out the window of his office, where the city moved briskly beneath us, people rushing, lives continuing. Mine would too. He told me, I said slowly, that I was a placeholder until his ex got her life together. Mr. Carter's fingers stopped tapping. He looked up briefly, his expression softening by a degree. "Then I suppose we'll make sure that position is permanently closed." A small, humorless smile tugged at my lips. "Please do." When I left the office, the sky was overcast but steady, the kind of gray that promises no surprises. I liked that. Predictable weather. Predictable outcomes. 2 days later, I went back to the apartment while Franklin was at work. I'd arranged with the building manager to unlock the door. Walking inside was like walking into a memory someone else had staged. Everything was neat, untouched, the throw blanket folded, the dishes stacked, the faint scent of my lavender candle still lingering in the air. But it felt lifeless, a set that had already finished filming. I didn't linger. I moved through each room with surgical precision, collecting what was truly mine. A few boxes of books, my laptop, a framed photo of my parents, the kitchen knives my grandmother gave me. I passed his framed photo on the shelf, us smiling at the beach sunlight painting my hair gold. I looked at that woman, the one in the picture. Her eyes were open, but unseeing. She didn't know she was temporary. I left the frame behind. It belonged to her, the placeholder version of me. When I stepped out of that apartment for the last time, the key in my hand felt heavier than I remembered. I turned it once in the lock, then dropped it into the return envelope and slid it under the door. That small click metal meeting wood was the true goodbye. Outside, the air felt different, lighter. I stood there for a moment, letting it touch my skin before walking to the elevator. My phone buzzed again as I reached the car. A new number this time. I ignored it. I already knew what it would say. That night, I ate dinner alone at a small Thai restaurant near my hotel. I watched people laugh, clink glasses, scroll on their phones, lives in motion. I felt detached but not lonely. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't responsible for anyone's happiness but my own. After dinner, I opened my laptop and started looking for apartments. Something small, quiet with sunlight. No shared lease, no extra keys. The next morning, I found one a modest studio with wide windows and a single oak tree outside. The listing said ideal for someone starting fresh. I signed the lease within the week. The move-in was almost ceremonial. One suitcase, 2 boxes, no ghosts. I set down my coffee mug, my only coffee mug, on the counter and looked around. It wasn't much, but it was mine. That night, sitting on the floor with takeout, I caught myself smiling. Not because I was happy yet, but because I could finally hear my own thoughts again. I thought about Franklin not with longing, but with a strange, detached clarity. How he'd called my calm suffocating. How he'd craved fire without realizing fire burns everything it touches. And how I had mistaken his chaos for depth. Maybe that was the cruelest part of love, confusing someone's brokenness for passion. As I finished my noodles, the rain started again outside. I didn't flinch at the thunder this time. I listened to it. Each rumble sounded like something old collapsing something necessary. When I went to bed, I left the curtains open. The city lights painted soft reflections on the ceiling, golden fragile, alive. Before sleep claimed me, I whispered a small promise into the darkness. I won't be anyone's safety net again. The only person I'm saving from now on is me. And for the first time since Franklin said the word placeholder, I didn't feel replaced. I felt reborn. 2 weeks passed before anyone mentioned Franklin again. I had slipped into a rhythm that felt almost like peace, early mornings. Quiet breakfasts and evenings spent unpacking boxes one by one. The stillness of my new apartment was addictive. It was the kind of silence that hummed with safety, not loneliness. Then one morning my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Ruby, it's Leah. I heard you moved out. Just wanted to check in. Leah was one of the few mutual friends I'd actually liked, grounded kind, the type who stayed neutral in other people's drama. I hesitated before replying. I'm okay, I wrote, starting over. She sent 3 dots, then finally, Franklin's not doing well. He's with Sienna again. I stared at the message for a long time, my coffee cooling beside me. The name didn't sting the way it used to. It was just confirmation the plotline I already knew would unfold. That didn't take long, I typed back. Leah's reply came quick. She moved in. He says she's changed. Changed. The most dangerous word in the language of second chances. I closed my phone and went to work. I had clients to meet, designs to submit. My life no longer revolved around whether Franklin ate, slept, or spiraled. But that evening, as I walked home, I found myself glancing at the couples passing by, people laughing, leaning into each other. And a quiet thought surfaced. I used to think that was us. The following weeks brought updates I never asked for. A mutual friend, Ben, called me one afternoon. His tone was strained. Ruby just thought you should know things over there. They're messy, like screaming in parking lots messy. I said nothing. Sienna's back to her old habits. There was some fight about money. He maxed out his credit card again. Cops were almost called. My response was automatic. I'm sorry to hear that. But my voice didn't carry emotion. It sounded mechanical, polite, the way you speak to a stranger about bad weather. That night I deleted Ben's number. I wasn't angry at him. I just didn't need any windows looking into that part of my past. Then one morning, while sipping tea by the window, an old notification blinked across my laptop screen, something I'd completely forgotten existed. A Google alert. I'd set up 2 years ago while helping Franklin build his case against Sienna. New result for Sienna Moore. My heart barely reacted as I clicked it. It was a local police brief. Sienna Moore, 30, and Franklin Reed, 32, were taken into custody for questioning following a reported break-in at a construction site, items seized from their shared apartment pending investigation. I read it once, then again slower. Franklin's name was there, tangled in hers, printed in black and white. The same story playing out only now, with me watching from the shore instead of drowning in it. The first feeling wasn't joy. It was validation, a quiet, almost clinical recognition that I had escaped something inevitable. A few hours later, my phone rang. Another unknown number. I didn't answer. It went to voicemail. When I finally listened, I recognized the voice instantly, strained, furious, frantic. I can't believe you, Ruby. I'm in real trouble here, and you're just sitting there doing nothing. They took my laptop. My landlord's threatening to evict me. I admit I messed up, but you're supposed to be the better person. You can't just walk away like this. I listened until the end, then hit delete. No hesitation. I could almost hear my old self, the one who would have driven across town, fixed things, comforted him, cleaned up the wreckage he'd made. But that version of me was gone. She'd left the night I packed that bag. And yet, as the evening light dimmed across the apartment, a thought crept in. He still expected me to be his cure, even after everything he saw me as a solution, not a person. That realization hit harder than the voicemail. The next few days, I walked through the city differently, more aware, lighter. I started going to the gym again, cooking for myself, sleeping without waking to the sound of someone else's bad dreams. When I looked at my reflection in the mirror one morning, I barely recognized myself, not because I'd changed dramatically, but because the weight was gone. The exhaustion of being someone's emotional oxygen had lifted. One evening, I sat at my desk, lit by the orange glow of sunset, and wrote a list on a scrap of paper titled, "Things That Belong Only to Me." I filled it slowly. My mornings, my peace, my kindness when deserved, my boundaries. Then I folded the paper and slipped it into a book on my shelf, a private vow hidden in plain sight. Weeks passed. The news of Franklin and Sienna's arrest became just another forgotten article buried online. But occasionally, when the city grew too quiet, I'd think about him, the boy who needed chaos to feel alive, the man who called love fire. He had gotten his fire back, and for the first time I didn't feel burned. It started with an email. I was at work editing a project proposal when the notification appeared at the top of my screen. The sender's name froze me for half a heartbeat. Franklin Reed. The subject line read, "I'm broken." I shouldn't have opened it. I knew better. But curiosity is a cruel reflex. I clicked. "Ruby, I know you probably hate me, but I can't stop thinking about you. I'm not okay. Sienna's gone. She left after everything fell apart. I have no money, no place to go. I'm staying in a motel that smells like bleach and regret. You were never a placeholder. I said that because I didn't feel worthy of you. I was scared and I pushed you away. Please, I just need to see you, to talk, to remember that there's still some good left in the world. Yours always, Franklin." I stared at the message for a long moment. If I had read it months earlier, it might have gutted me, all those half-truths disguised as remorse. But now all I saw was manipulation dressed as poetry. The same man who once told me I was too safe now wanted refuge again. I hovered my cursor over reply for a second, not because I wanted to answer, but because I wanted to understand the part of me that once would have, the part that mistook pity for compassion. Then I clicked trash. The sound of the email disappearing into the digital void was oddly satisfying, a soft electronic exhale of closure. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my balcony. The city glowed below each light, a small life in motion. I thought about how easy it had been for him to find my email, how no boundary ever really existed with Franklin unless I enforced it. I whispered to the night, "No more rescues." But he wasn't done. 3 days later, another message arrived, not from him this time, but from Leah. "Ruby, please hear me out. Franklin is really falling apart. He's staying with Ben, and it's bad. He talks about you constantly. I know he hurt you, but he's lost everything. Don't let anger harden you like this." My anger, I almost laughed. I wasn't angry, I was free. Still, I called Leah back. She picked up immediately, her voice trembling with a mix of sympathy and judgment. "Ruby, thank God. I was afraid you'd block me too." "I might," I said flatly. "Depends on what this is about." "It's about Franklin," she said, rushing the words. He's not himself. He's drinking again. He's saying things like he wishes he never—" "Leah," I interrupted gently. "Do you think this is the first time he's fallen apart?" "I know, but—" "Do you remember what he told me? That I was a placeholder. That my love was suffocating. And now, after Sienna ruined his life again, he suddenly remembers my worth." There was a pause. I could hear her soft breathing through the phone. "You don't sound angry," she said finally. "I'm not," I said. "I'm indifferent. There's a difference. Ruby, he needs help. Then he can find it in a rehab center, not in me." Her sigh came sharp through the line. "You've changed." "Good," I replied. That was the point. I ended the call before she could respond and blocked her number. The conversation left a faint ache in my chest, not from guilt, but from the realization that people will always try to drag you back into the stories they're comfortable with. In Franklin's story, I was the caretaker, the calm, the constant, but that role had been retired, permanently. The next day, while reorganizing my bookshelf, a small photo fluttered from between 2 novels. It was one I hadn't realized I'd kept Franklin and me sitting by the lake, sunlight spilling across the water. He was smiling at me, but his eyes were elsewhere. Even in the photograph, he looked like he was waiting for something or someone else. I tore the picture in half and threw it away. The weeks rolled by quietly. Work thrived, sleep came easily, and the silence I once feared became a friend. Then one Friday evening, my phone buzzed again. A number from our old area code. I didn't answer. It went to voicemail. Ruby, it's Ben. I know you don't want to hear this, but Franklin's really in a dark place. He's talking about ending things. Maybe if he heard from you. I deleted it before the sentence finished. Because here's what I'd learned when someone tries to weaponize your empathy. Silence is the only shield that works. But silence, I would soon find, is also a test one Franklin was determined to break. The next morning, I was sipping coffee sunlight, warming my face, when my phone rang again. Same area code, different number. I should have ignored it, but I didn't. Hello. There was a pause, then a quiet, trembling voice. Ruby, it's me. Franklin. I said nothing. I'm at the hospital, he continued. I took something. Not enough, I guess. I just couldn't see a way out. They're keeping me for observation. The nurse said to call someone who cares. You're the only person I could think of. The silence stretched between us like a live wire. I could hear the faint beeping of machines in the background, his shaky breath, the faint tremor of performance in his tone. Once upon a time, I would have rushed their panic tears, all of it. I would have been exactly who he needed me to be. But I'd finally learned that pity is not love, it's a leash. My voice came out calm, almost clinical. Franklin, are you safe with the medical staff? What, yes, but. Then you're where you need to be. Ruby, please, I hope you get the help you need, Franklin, I said quietly. Goodbye. And then I hung up. My hand didn't even shake. That afternoon, I went for a walk by the river. The air smelled like rain and freedom. My phone stayed silent in my pocket, and I smiled not from cruelty, but from peace. He had tried to pull me back into his chaos one last time, but I was done being someone's emergency exit. Some people call that heartless. I call it recovery. 6 months later, my life didn't feel like a recovery anymore. It felt like a new chapter. The sharp edges of the past had dulled into quiet lessons. I had moved to a brighter apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and a small balcony where I kept herbs that somehow refused to die. And then there was Marcus. He wasn't lightning or chaos. He was sunrise, gentle, consistent, warm in a way that didn't scorch. We'd met at a landscape design seminar, bonded over our shared dislike of small talk, and started dating with no drama, no power plays, no mind games. I used to think love had to be painful to be real. Marcus proved otherwise. That Saturday morning, we sat at our favorite cafe downtown, a sun-washed place with plants hanging from the ceiling, and the smell of cinnamon in the air. We were sharing pancakes, laughing about a client who wanted to install a koi pond in his living room. For the first time in years, I was fully present. No ghosts, no lingering ache, just stillness. Then a hand touched my shoulder. It wasn't gentle. It was possessive, a grip that made my entire body go rigid before my mind even processed who it was. I turned slowly. Franklin. He looked older, but not in years and erosion. His hair was unkempt, his skin pale and uneven. His once sharp eyes were glassy, flickering between me and Marcus, like he couldn't decide which version of my life to destroy first. His clothes hung on him wrinkled and cheap, and there was a faint smell of cigarettes clinging to his jacket. Ruby, he said, voice trembling between desperation and disbelief. We need to talk. For a moment, the cafe's sounds blurred coffee machines' laughter, the hum of morning. Everything slowed. Then I exhaled. Franklin, this isn't a good time. It's never a good time for you anymore, is it? His voice cracked. My life is ruined. Sienna's gone. I lost my apartment, my car, everything. I'm waiting tables just to survive. I have nothing. He said it like a confession, like an accusation. He was waiting for pity. I didn't give it. I'm sorry to hear that, I said quietly, my tone polite, the same one I'd use with a stranger. He blinked, thrown off balance. That's it, you don't even care. Across the table, Marcus set down his fork, watching calmly, not intervening. His silence was protective, not passive. I could feel it, his quiet trust that I could handle this. I turned to him with a small, deliberate smile. Marcus, this is Franklin. Then back to Franklin. Franklin, this is Marcus. The introduction was surgical. It sliced through every illusion Franklin still had about who I belonged to or who I used to be. Franklin's jaw tightened. So this is what you replaced me with? I held his gaze. I didn't replace you. You replaced yourself. His voice rose. You don't get to just erase what we had, Ruby. After everything we've been through, after everything I went through, I corrected softly. You told me I was a placeholder, a safe option until your chaos came back. Well, chaos came back, and look where it got you. He flinched. Around us, a few cafe patrons glanced over, sensing tension, then politely looked away. The world kept spinning, indifferent to his drama. He took a step closer to the table, lowering his voice to a hiss. I was wrong. Okay. You were the only person who ever believed in me. I messed up, but I can fix it. I can. Franklin. My voice cut through his sentence, calm and sharp. No. He stared at me wide-eyed, like he hadn't prepared for that single word. I leaned back slightly, my posture relaxed, unthreatened. You keep mistaking my silence for an opening. It's not. It's closure. For a heartbeat, he stood there frozen, then tried again, his voice cracking. You can't just walk away like I'm nothing. I let out a slow breath, steady and final. You told me I was temporary. I just stopped waiting for you to realize what permanent looked like. Then deliberately, I turned back to Marcus, my tone softening, as if Franklin were already gone. So you were saying about the mountain trip in September? Marcus smiled faintly, picking up the thread. Yeah, I was thinking we drive up Friday night, avoid the traffic. That was it. The conversation resumed without Franklin in it. The silence that followed from his end was brutal. He stood there, a ghost in daylight, watching a world that had moved on without him. After a long pause, he whispered, You're really done, aren't you? I met his eyes one last time. I was done the night you called me a placeholder. I just didn't realize it yet. And then in a voice barely above a breath, I added, You wanted fire, Franklin. You got it. Don't be surprised it burned. He stepped back slowly, as if the weight of the truth finally landed. His lips parted, 100 things unsaid, and then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the noise of the street outside. I didn't watch him go. Marcus reached across the table and took my hand. His touch was steady, warm grounding. You okay? He asked softly. I looked at him, at his quiet eyes, the sunlight glinting off his coffee cup, the ordinary peace of that moment, and smiled. Better than okay. Outside, the day went on as if nothing monumental had happened. But for me, it had. Because that was the day I realized closure isn't a conversation, it's a choice. As we finished our brunch, laughter returning easily between us, I caught my reflection in the cafe window. For the first time, the woman looking back didn't seem like someone surviving her past. She looked like someone standing in her own story, one no one else could rewrite. And that silence Franklin left behind, it wasn't empty. It was golden. After that morning at the cafe, the world didn't change, but mine did. It was like someone had quietly lifted a glass dome from over my life. The air felt cleaner, lighter. Every step I took afterward belonged only to me. Franklin didn't reach out again. Not through messages, not through mutual friends, not even through guilt. His absence was absolute, and I didn't miss him. In fact, I found myself wondering if he'd finally learned to live with his own silence the way I had learned to live with mine. A month later, I was on my balcony at sunset, watering the stubborn little rosemary plant that refused to die. The sky was that bruised violet that comes before night, the kind of color that makes you pause just to breathe it in. Marcus was inside, humming softly while he cooked dinner. I remember thinking how rare it was to feel safe in ordinary moments. I hadn't felt that kind of peace in years. When I turned off the watering can, my phone buzzed on the table beside me, a new number, no name. For half a second, my chest tightened, but this time I didn't flinch. I let it ring until it stopped. Then I watched the notification fade into silence. Some ghosts don't deserve an audience. Later that night, Marcus and I ate dinner by candlelight. Nothing fancy, just pasta and cheap red wine. He was telling me about a client who wanted to plant an orchard on the roof of a corporate building. I laughed, really laughed, and it startled me. It had been so long since laughter didn't feel like recovery. Halfway through dinner, Marcus reached across the table and brushed his thumb against my wrist. You disappear sometimes, he said gently. In your eyes, I mean. I smiled faintly. Old habit. He didn't press. He just nodded. Eyes soft with understanding. And that was the beauty of him. He didn't try to fix the parts of me that were still healing. He just gave them room to breathe. That night, after he'd fallen asleep, I stood by the window, watching the lights of the city pulse like distant stars. My reflection in the glass looked calm, almost unfamiliar. The woman who once begged for scraps of attention now lived a life so peaceful it almost scared her. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to justify that peace. I thought about Franklin, the chaos, the fire, the noise. He'd called my love suffocating. But in truth, it was his own instability that had starved us both. He needed someone to burn for him. I had finally learned to shine without flames. That realization didn't come with anger. it came with quiet gratitude, because if he hadn't called me a placeholder, I might still be holding space in a story that was never meant for me. The next morning, I woke up before Marcus, the early light spilling across the sheets. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and began sketching designs for a new client, a rooftop garden for a small women's shelter. I wanted to fill it with resilient plants, lavender, rosemary, and sunflowers that always turn toward the light. Halfway through my sketch, I wrote a small note in the corner of the page, "Grow where you were once left waiting." I didn't know why I wrote it, but it felt like truth. Later that week, I walked through the park near my apartment, the same one I used to avoid, because it reminded me of the life Franklin and I once planned to build. But now the memory didn't sting. It just existed, like a chapter I'd finished and filed away. As I sat on a bench, watching children chase each other under the trees, I realized something. Healing doesn't look like erasing the past. It looks like remembering it without wanting to go back. And in that moment, surrounded by laughter and sunlight, I finally understood that peace isn't the absence of pain, it's the mastery of it. That night, Marcus and I took a drive along the coast. The ocean shimmered under the moonlight, the air thick with salt and possibility. He reached for my hand as we drove, and I didn't think about the past, or the people who broke me to pieces, or the versions of myself that used to beg for love. I just thought about how beautiful it was to be seen without needing to be saved. When we stopped by a cliff overlooking the sea, Marcus turned to me with a soft smile. "You look peaceful," he said. I looked out at the horizon where the dark water met the faintest blush of dawn. "I am," I whispered. And I meant it. In the distance, the first light of morning touched the waves, soft, golden, alive. It spread slowly, steadily, until the whole sky glowed with quiet promise. The same golden silence I had built for myself. I wasn't anyone's placeholder anymore. I was home.